back instead of pivoting forward on this one. This is the end of a long, long road for you, for Sir Patrick, and many, many Wolverine films, almost 20 years. Yeah, you can applaud for that. That's a woo. At the very end, what does this feel like? Saying goodbye.
Right now, it feels, okay, how does it feel? I feel unbelievably grateful. I feel at peace. Someone gave me a gymnastics metaphor that we stuck the landing, which I'm now going to adopt because that's how it feels.
Yes.
And that's because of this man here, and especially this man here, Jim Mangold, who I am forever grateful for. I really, honestly, we've done 3 films together, hopefully many more, but this was the first time we worked together on something which we had a blank canvas, and we started talking about this during the Wolverine when we were shooting that 3 or 4, 5 years ago, and I had 100 ideas, about 3 of them ended up in the movie, and the other 97% of it is Jim Mangold, basically.
Yes.
Applause for that.
Woo!
You co-wrote the script with Scott Frank and with Michael Green, and you know, you have talked about with me, and I know with other people, is you didn't see this as, you didn't want to make a good superhero movie. You want to make a good movie. You wanted to make a movie that really talked about things and really addressed some things. I want to know for you, why do you see that was a differentiation?
Well, I don't even think there is such a thing as a superhero movie. I mean, as a genre. I mean, I think that if it is, it's a pretty sucky genre. There's fantasy films, there's heroic films, meaning Ben-Hur and The Dark Knight and the story of Jesus Christ and Gladiator all are telling stories of heroes. The idea that we've gotten into where we're all trying to make a movie that fits the idea of a comic book movie has produced, I think, stagnant movies in my own taste, in which the movies are more about selling a kind of...
They're out selling.
They're selling other movies beyond themselves. They're more a kind of, they're about merchandising more than they're about a movie experience. And in many ways, the audience has been captured as well. Like they've actually managed to get us addicted to like extra scenes at the end and little thread characters that we'll see in the next movie. And while all that can be fun for some, it isn't for me. But it is effectively just a tool to make us buy tickets to things that haven't even been made yet, and to get our satisfaction off of not the 2 hours we've been given, but being some part of some kind of quote universe, which has its excitement, but it all makes it harder for the filmmaker to make a decent film for the 2 hours that you actually arrive for, because suddenly we're servicing other movies, Happy Meals, action figures, merchandising agendas, cross promotions, and it stops being a movie as much. And so it's not so much that I don't want to make a film about heroism or unique people or touched people with talents, but that I didn't want with this film, and I think Hugh didn't either, to fall back into the mold of what was happening. And I think we set off to either succeed or fail trying to solve the problems of what the movie was in a different way, how the movie could operate, you know, on a more character-based level than
You know, obviously today we've seen a seismic shift with the Disney Fox deal, and one of the things that people wonder about is there room in this new business universe for what is an R-rated film, and is a very successful R-rated film, is a film that is R-rated because it's mature in the true sense of R-rated. Hutch, for your point of view, you know, people come to these characters with a lot of legacy, and not just Hugh being on screen for almost 2 decades, but a lot of legacy. How do you meet that expectation and also tell the story that you think you really want to tell? Because there's a lot in this movie. You guys have seen it. You know it. From the very beginning, there's stuff about immigration. There's stuff about civil rights. There's many, many issues being addressed here. And they're not being addressed in a nuanced way. They're out there. They're clear that you're talking about these things.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things to that. I mean, the first Hugh's already touched on, which is probably most important for some of us who've been around these movies for a very long time, is entrusting them to truly gifted artists. And I've said this before, and I'll keep saying it as many times as I'm giving a microphone or a platform, Jim is one of the most gifted filmmakers working in cinema today. I really
Yes.
believe that so strongly. And this story was not only perfectly suited to the conclusion of an iconic character and a conclusion that Hugh desperately wanted, but I think perfectly suited to Jim and his talents as a character-based storyteller, as somebody who has done a broad range of different cinematic styles, and for me seemed to be almost destined to make a movie like this that combined all the commercial power and excitement and satisfaction, but with an incredible depth and artistry and thoughtfulness. And so to me, that's the first thing. And in answer to your other question about, in this new landscape, I actually think rather than these kinds of movies becoming more rare, I think it's actually the opposite. I think the audience is demanding, and the quality of entertainment that's available is demanding, that we as storytellers and studios as financiers must be more bold. That if we're not, we get pablum that gets rejected.
More bold.
So I actually do think not every, I can't pretend that everybody agrees with that thesis, but I see it happening. I think it's part of why
You can certainly say to people, like, look at the box office, look at the response. It's so often with films, blockbusters, which keep the lights on in Hollywood, and we all have to admit that, but they don't receive a lot of critical acclaim. They don't receive a lot of serious discussion. This film did, and that's a double threat right there.
And we have a studio that actually genuinely supported us in making it, which is remarkable. I mean, this was not a story of, wow, we had to battle with them, and they were so unsupportive and didn't understand us, and that was not the case.
But they did, it was explained to our leaders at Fox that they were probably leaving $75 to $100 million on the table if this movie was PG. And they were also, I had a big fight in the sense that I did not want to call the movie X-Men, anything, or Wolverine, the last
Logan, The Return.
I think
that all these movies should have the
You would
same
not
title?
believe the amount of memos I generated while in production to just get the movie called Logan. And again, marketing people were essentially convinced in telling the bosses of the studio that you're leaving money on the table if you don't have Wolverine in the title. And to me,
You buy that?
I don't give a shit. Meaning that there's a point at which the logic of what keeps money on the table, even the language of it, just makes me nauseous and has nothing to do with making a good film. And a lot of the reason titles and posters and these things matter is that you die so quickly. With the internet and the amount of crosstalk that happens, the decision about your film is made in a fucking instant. And so the second you seem like another one of these die-cut Play-Doh fuzzy pumper fucking things coming out of the line, you're just done. And that to address a couple things about the rating too, while I'm blabbing. Well, one would be that an interesting thing happened to me today. My assistant called me and he said, we got the TV cut for Logan. That when you're a director of a movie, they tell you all the things they had to cut for TV, right? And but what's really interesting, obviously for broadcast TV, where it probably will never appear, there was a good amount of just knife pokes that were taken out. But interestingly, for most cable, there was almost no cuts at all, except language. And that what I want to bring that up for is actually an interesting point, which is that Game of Thrones is like NC-17. And that in a way, because we're so cowardly and our politicians are so cowardly, and even some of the people who run the MPAA are so frightened to make a change, we end up calling something R and it becomes restricted and ooh, you made an R film, when you could turn on fucking television any day of the week and see shit that's just as graphic or frank. And so in a weird way, we're holding back theatrical films in a weird way and making it really hard to do anything but make a film for 12-year-olds.
But I would say at the same time, it's one of the things I think, and I think it's one of the things very successful about Logan, and you mentioned Game of Thrones, is, you know, for so many years we've seen this explosion in storytelling in television. And people will even say, oh, it's not a television show, it's a 65-hour movie, right? And as if that's the standard.
I agree that it's great.
Yeah, and I do agree it's great, but what I think is really interesting is with Logan, you create a film that excels and aims to and excels towards that level of storytelling. It works on that. Logan assumes that you've watched seasons 1 to 5 of Wolverine in many ways. It assumes you're working with a story that you have an understanding of. It doesn't,
I actually made the movie that I hoped it would function if you had not seen any of it.
But that's why it works, because it works on both levels, because it doesn't say to you, oh, now we need to have a giant flashback scene that explains to you everything that ever happened in 5 minutes. So Hugh, for you, going into that, were you concerned about what this Logan was going to be like as opposed to the other Logans, for you as an actor?
Concerned, yeah, because I knew it was my last time, so I wanted to go to bed at night knowing that I'd done everything, we'd all done everything we possibly could to fulfill this character, so, and I am sleeping really well, so on that level it worked. I've just lost my train of thought.
Well, he was very protective of me, I will say, that one of the things that you did was that he really put his shoulder down and was very insistent on just holding tight to one another and kind of saying, this is the kind of movie we're going to make, do you want to make it? But also in the creative endeavor of doing it, you know, you don't know if you're going to be successful, you don't know it's going to work, and the only thing you know while you're doing it is that it's kind of different than what we've done before. So that the confidence and the faith that you had in this picture is why it exists, to be honest.
Well, and I just remember what I was going to say, but thanks for saying that. There's really 8 people, I would say 8 core people who've believed so much in this film and fought hard for this film. I think it's my new paradigm for great filmmaking. It doesn't matter how big it is, less people fighting harder, believing more is generally the way.
So you guys are like a wild bunch.
Yeah, it felt like that. I'm talking studio people, I'm talking writers, I'm talking actors, and I want to particularly mention Patrick Stewart, who was not here. But
yes.
But I hope this doesn't disappoint anyone. But this is what I was going to say before. I had never read a comic book when I got cast as Wolverine. I didn't know what Wolverine was. When I turned up, this is embarrassing to admit, when I turned up on set, for the first one. You
can admit it now though, because you're, you know.
Now I can.
You're good, right?
I had studied a documentary on wolves, because I thought, and I was doing some crazy kind of animal stuff, and someone going, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I saw this thing on wolves, and the cool thing about wolves is they're always looking down like that because they're smelling. They're actually smelling. That's why they look so ferocious. It's got nothing." And the guy goes, "Dude, you're not a wolf." I said, "Well, yeah, it's kind of like a wolf man, right?" And he goes, "No, it's a wolverine." I said, "Well, there's no such thing as a wolverine." And he goes, "It's an animal in the zoo down the road." And we've got some weird shit in Australia. I'd never heard of a wolverine. I thought it was like a comic book name for an animal. That's how little I knew, right? So going back to your point of this movie, I didn't come to it as a comic book fan. I've become a fan. I've come to appreciate particularly the art and the storytelling, the political messages, everything. The sophistication of comic books has blown me away. But when I came to it, I was the last person to go and see a comic book movie, if there was one, right? So I was like, I really believe that the people out there, friends of mine, who go, I'm not into comic book movies, that was the kind of movie we wanted to make. We certainly didn't want to take people for granted and assume they'd watched any of the X-Men movies or any of the Wolverine movies. In the same way, you can watch Unforgiven if you've never seen a Western in your life, and that is a beautiful story that will rip your heart open.
And that's a very good, very good bringing it up, because from almost in the very beginning, certainly actually, I gotta tell you, when I saw the poster, I was like, this is a Western. That's what this movie is. I mean, if you want to give it a genre, this is a Western.
Yes.
This is like, the old gang are going to come and they're going to try to take the new, it was, and I felt like that, the limo was a stagecoach, and it felt like that from almost the get-go.
Well, you know, the interesting thing about Westerns is that they have so much to offer. I think noir films as well, but the Westerns, one of the things they offer us is a lesson in how action films, kind of right, wrong, hero, villain, underdog films, how you can make them without building them on ever-rising stakes. Like we have this arms race going on in tentpole movies, which is like, oh, you blew up a city, I'm gonna blow up a state. You blew up a state, I'm gonna blow up a country. Now the whole planet's in jeopardy. Now we're gonna go back in time and the whole universe. And at some point, I don't really believe an audience gives more of a shit whether North America or the planet will go, or one family in a house. And that we care just as much, in fact, sometimes more about the people we get to know than to just watch spheres blowing up with new ovaloid explosion patterns developed by ILM. And that the reality becomes, the Western teaches us how to make you care about the characters. And that because it doesn't have the special effects, other than men and women, guns, horses, culture clashes, railroads, but it's really simple stuff. And you can learn a lot about dramatic structure and character work from great westerns.
You mentioned, and we talked about him, the man whose name we will say in absence, which is Patrick Stewart. The two of you've become so linked, and I think in the public imagination and as actors, and I know personally that you're friends. What was it like for you and Patrick? This knowing that this is the last one, that this was the send off.
It was so exciting. He didn't know it was his last one, by the way, at the time. He was like, all right, you're going, but I'm sticking around. Like,
They already filmed it once, so.
And the first day of shooting for Patrick and I was that 7-minute scene at the beginning in the tank. And there's probably more nuance, more layers, more level, more humanity in that 7 minutes than we've been able to enjoy collectively in the last, 17 years. Just, the nature of those ensemble movies, there's only so much time you get on screen, there's only so many characters that can be fully developed, and even though that relationship, the quasi-father-son sort of dynamic that was there, had been explored to a certain degree, particularly in X-Men 1, but never to this level. And I remember we hugged each other at the end of that first day. It was so thrilling, and for me, as a drama student, back in 1992, I watched all of the John Barton tapes. If anyone's interested in acting, it's How to Play Shakespeare. Yeah. So the John Barton tapes has McKellen, and it has Patrick Stewart and Judi Dench and David Suchet and Alan Bates and Alan Howard, blah, 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 everybody. And I remember thinking, one day I would love to be able to perform Shakespeare like him. And the first movie set in America I turn up to is Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart. So I was... For me,
and you're acting like a wolf.
Thinking they'd be impressed.
Oh, we're impressed now. We're impressed now. Greatest YouTube video never released.
I was like, this is what people in America, this is De Niro and Pacino and Heat. Watching those two playing chess together, I was like, this is amazing to me. So 17 years later, to develop this too, and when Jim was writing those scenes, I was so excited to come to set and work with Patrick on those scenes. And he'd lost 22 pounds. It was quite alarming when he turned up, because he's boasted to me all the time. He's been the same weight since he was 14 years of age until this film. Like, he says maybe 1 pound or 2 pounds. And I was like, do not tell anybody that, so I'm telling everyone. Because everyone will hate you. But here he lost 22 pounds, and this very youthful, strong guy. He seemed very frail and fragile. The whole thing was magic. It was a dream. And then Daphne, of course. You add Daphne into it, and it was just
Yes.
Definitely applause. I wanted to talk about that. I mean, it's the relationship that Wolverine, that Logan has had through the X-Men franchise has always been, as Charles is a mentor to him, he's been a mentor to the younger X-Men, and those relationships can sometimes be quite complicated. With Daphne, there's multiple levels of complication. There's acceptance, there's